All right. So here is my presentation on the team leadership theory and practice. This is the chapter I was assigned in Northouse's leadership book. And so I'm going to talk about it in terms of the movie Moneyball, one of my favorite leadership movies and movies in general, but has a lot to do with leadership, especially team leadership as it applies to our class and our discussion. So here's just kind of summary of what we're going to talk about. We're going to start talking about just the chapter in general and what Northouse has to say about it. Then we're going to apply team leadership and see where that applies based on what Northouse has to say. We're going to look at the pros and cons as outlined in the book. Then we're going to talk about the movie and how that can be used and how that can be seen through team leadership and how the movie kind of plays into this. So I'm really excited about that part, but we'll get into it. So team leadership is pretty much, at least for me personally, is kind of what I think leadership is in general, kind of without even going into too much detail about it. This is really, it was kind of like reading a well done kind of chapter of the book, just because so much of it seems very, when I think of leadership, I think of it in this context. Just growing up playing sports and doing everything that I've been a part of, whether that was ministry at camp or ministry in other areas. Team leadership is very common and very typical. So just to kind of go into it a little bit, just give specific definitions that kind of the book gives us. Define a team is a very common structure within the workplace, and specifically in ministry, you're starting to see it a little bit more and more. The book kind of talks about how research kind of started in the 1920s, and our best definition, or how I defined a team, is a group of people who are not only a group, but they're also individuals. They work together to achieve the same goal. And I think keys to that are all outlined through there, where they're working alongside one another despite their own individuality. They're trying to find the same goal and reach the same point. Northouse points out a couple times that through all this research, we found team success is often tied to successful leadership and effective leadership. So as the leader goes, or as the team is led, that's how the team goes as well. So it doesn't always have to be a defined leader, and we'll kind of talk about that a little bit more. And I'll probably say that a couple times. It's not always just one person who has to be doing it all, but it can come through the team and that kind of be created in the aggregate to kind of call to the movie if you've seen it. So yeah, as I said, it's kind of just the general term of leadership as I think about it. So the book kind of lists two different models. One is the author's interpretation, and the other one is one that is research based and found in research about team leadership. So this is the first one. This is that one that was found in research, and it kind of breaks it into this little matrix here. So we see there's two different ways a leader can kind of go about things. One is through monitoring, and the other one is through taking action. And those have two different areas, whether it's internal or external. So kind of, again, I'll just kind of point out, as I said earlier, it doesn't have to be carried out by the leader himself. It can be carried out by the team. As long as these needs are met, the team will succeed. So if we kind of look at it, the first two quadrants look at internal parts of a team. The leader is diagnosing the group problems and looking at it and analyzing it and then coming up with what's wrong. And then the second step, he's going into the group to fix it, to change what needs to be changed, provide what needs to be provided in order to get it done, in order to help the team succeed. And then we look at the second level there, we're looking at the external processes. The third quadrant, this number 3 down here in the bottom left, Leaders scanning the environment to determine any changes that may affect the group coming from outside. So that can look many different ways. It can be kind of a funding issue, or it can be a personnel issue. Maybe someone's leaving, or we're trying to hire somebody, or there's something going on where we have to cut somebody out. As far as if we're to look at kind of a business type, real world, I'm thinking of The Office when they talk about downsizing all the time. That's that forecasting environmental changes around it, and then preventing deleterious changes. So whenever a company is downsizing, just to kind of follow that path, in that example, you're making sure you're cutting out what doesn't need to be there and what's only going to affect the team in a negative manner. So you're going to cut out the negative so that you aren't getting rid of something that's going to help you succeed down the line. So as I kind of said, it can be done by anybody. As long as these needs are being met, the team should succeed according to team leadership. And the leader through all of this is kind of analyzing and then taking action to kind of help the team succeed, whether that's in a preventative manner or from an internal or external perspective. All right. So necessary components of a team, and specifically to team leadership. This is kind of a big portion of the Northouse text. Talks about how the leader has to kind of fill these things, and then here's what team performance needs to do as well to create an effective team. So ideally, a team leader has a vision and he executes that vision, and then he's also flexible, can gather, analyze, and act. And like I said, I've been repeating over and over, this doesn't have to come from the leader himself. It can be from team members created in an aggregate type way, as long as both the material and personnel resources are handled properly, the team should succeed. Again, that vision should create direction, and the leader should always be able to enable his team members and help them out, as well as coach them and get them to the level that they need to be in order to achieve their goals. And adequate material resources are the leader's responsibility in order to help the team succeed. Then we look at this team performance column. We're looking at where kind of the environment needed to create an effective team. So the team needs to have these clear and elevating goals, something that is a result that they can chase after, and each team member needs to be competent in their area, and they all have to have the same goal and all be striving towards the same thing with kind of a similar drive. And they also have to be able to work together, be collaborative, and then again, kind of have a standard that they're trying to set and a standard that they're trying to be at the entire time so that the team can go up. And again, the leader needs to be principled and be able to find external support where needed for these team members. And then here, the author in Northouse of this chapter is Hill, and they define this model for the team and for team leadership. And you can kind of see elements that come from that matrix we looked at earlier. And if I were to just kind of walk through this, we'll kind of go one column at a time through task, relational, and environmental as we go through it, and kind of provide a little bit of examples that kind of come from that last slide, and we'll kind of tie them in here, right? So leader, mediation, decisions. So the leader has to figure out what type of decision to make, how much to intervene, and then which way to go, whether he needs to go external or internal to help this thing get done, to fix whatever's going on and whatever's wrong in order to help the team succeed. So if he goes internal, his leadership functions are either task or relational oriented. So a task oriented examples of that are clarifying goals, establishing structure, assisting with decision making, training or coaching his staff, and then also setting standards for his staff. All of that boils into team effectiveness, whether performance or development based. And then we go with the relational path. Some ideas or examples of that are, again, coaching, collaborating, managing conflict, building commitment, satisfying needs, and modeling principles for his team. So I kind of looked at these, especially on this side of the model. You look at task and relational, a lot of these kind of correlate. Clarifying goals kind of goes with both coaching and building commitment. I feel like those all kind of tie together, as well as modeling principles can help clarify goals as well. So if the leader is showing what needs to be done, that clarifies for everyone else, kind of in that quiet leader kind of way, where he's going to do it and expect people to follow him, and kind of show how it needs to be done. It also shows the team provides some sort of encouragement or motivation to them to get their stuff done, and gives them an idea of how that needs to be done. So yeah, I feel like there's a lot here, especially on this task and relational side. The internal side here, a lot of it overlaps, and doing one thing as a leader can kind of cause a cascading effect, because you're hitting so many different areas of either the relational or the task oriented solution, to help your team and help you as the leader be effective. Then if we're going to move over to the external side, that all has to do with environmental things. So what's going on outside of the team that could affect the team, and how can the leader influence or work with those to create an effective team or increase performance or development of its team members. So ideas of what that looks like: networking, advocating for his team, negotiating support from others, or whether it's from higher up in the company or higher up in the ministry, if we're talking from ministry context. Again, another area this helps is like assessing the situation surrounding the team, the environment around the team, and then sharing information across teams, and trying to gather ideas, especially as a leader. That's very helpful, that you aren't just the only one feeding into your team, you're also gathering ideas from outside sources. So yeah, all of that's going to boil down into hopefully increasing team effectiveness, and this can go the opposite way, right? So if you're not doing well and you choose the wrong way, your team effectiveness is going to go down. So pros and cons of these of this team leadership model that we kind of looked at just now and described. Big part of it is it does a really good job of modeling real life, and kind of focusing on, and the research that was looked at focuses on real life organizational teams and work groups. It puts them in a context. It doesn't just isolate them. If you're looking at it and you're trying to make a model, it kind of solidifies that real world element here. Again, it enables leaders and members to diagnose and correct problems. So like I said multiple times, the leader isn't the only one doing it. The members also play into it as well. Provides a cognitive guide. You can kind of think through it, you can go through it. It's not simplistic, it's relatively complex. And so it makes the complex manageable when it comes to actually working in a team. It takes into account the changing role of leaders and members, because we've talked about over and over again here, it came up again. It doesn't just come from the leader, it comes from all levels, and doesn't use positional power, just to kind of continue to further that point. Cons here, it's not exactly fully tested and not completely researched. So it's a relatively new concept, and it needs a lot of questions still to be answered about it. It is complex, as we mentioned earlier. Sometimes that can be a strength, other times that can be a con. And answers aren't easy to find. You can't just go step by step through it and get to team success. So you have to be able to evaluate, and this is where kind of the skills of the leader actually come out. It's not just which I think is honestly a strength. It's not just a cookbook that you get to work with, which it never is. So it kind of goes back to that pros of being realistic. Again, no day-to-day guidance. It's new and creative, and so as we mentioned before, not entirely tested, not completely researched. Lots of questions still need to be answered, so it's kind of vague. There's no real clear place to start. It's not like this was your problem, take these steps. It's not a I can't think of the word I'm looking for right now, but it doesn't give you those steps, step-by-step instructions. So that's kind of where some of the cons and some critiques come in for this model. But overall, I think it's pretty effective. And I hope I'm not covering up anything with my little image, but movie time. I love the movie Moneyball. It's perhaps one of my favorite movies, especially when it comes to leadership. There's a lot of elements that can be included. Just kind of set the scene. This is Billy Bean. The picture, the guy played by Brad Pitt, is he's the general manager for the Oakland A's, and it takes place during the 2002 season and kind of follows the team. Following the 2001 season, Oakland A's had been on the brink of advancing in the playoffs, beating the big bad Yankees, who nobody likes unless I don't know how you end up liking the Yankees, but that's your own thing. But anyway, he demonstrates a lot of leadership and team leadership specifically aspects in the movie, and the movie does a pretty good job of portraying it as well. So like we talked about earlier, it's all about bringing individuals and forming them into a pursuit of a common goal. That common goal is a championship, and he mentions that multiple times. So if we're going to look at one thing I didn't necessarily touch on earlier, a part of team leadership is material development versus personal development. It kind of comes up in that matrix, and it kind of comes up in the functional model as well, or in the model we looked at last. There's kind of two aspects to team leadership. You're either looking at a material side or you're looking at the personnel in the team. So you're either developing from a goods standpoint, or you're developing personalities and characteristics and traits of the team members themselves. So when it comes to a baseball GM, the material development is players, and also the personnel development is players. And so it gets a little confusing if you haven't seen the movie. I hope this makes sense. I'm going to do my best to kind of explain how this plays into team leadership. So after the 2001 season, they get eliminated in the playoffs, and he has to figure out how to rebuild his team. So previous failures of losing in the playoffs, not a great season. He's going to lose 3 key players. He can't pay them enough money. It's a small market team. He doesn't have the resources that the Yankees have, but he has to somehow gather the players and anything that will help them win and succeed on the field, and hopefully achieve that common goal of a World Series championship. So the gather stage, you're looking at what's going on, and then you're going to evaluate it and analyze it to kind of come up with, okay, where are we at exactly? So he realizes he doesn't have enough money to keep the players who made this key run to the playoffs the year before. He sees that the team's going to be worse, and he's not going to be able to replace those players one for one in free agency. So he's not going to be able to either replace those players, bring them back to Oakland, or find a player like them and be able to afford them. So this leads to lots of meetings that he has to go into, and you see him kind of all in the movie kind of back to back. So the first one, he goes to the owner's office, and he tries to negotiate for some more money to help him go get players. He doesn't get any more money. So then he is on the phone with the player agents, trying to work a deal with the money that he does have. They all turn him down, so he's not getting his players back. Then he meets with another GM to try to make a trade or pick up some guys from them. And really just trying to build this team any way he can. He goes through multiple steps, and it's been no after no after no. So he doesn't really get the trade he wants from the other GM, but he meets this guy, Peter Brand, who kind of sets the scene for the rest of the movie, or kind of gets the ball rolling for the rest of the movie, where he talks about analytics and all of that. Great film about the history of baseball and what it looks like now. But so those were his external actions that he followed. Then he goes into these internal actions. So he meets with his scouts. They disagree with his new vision for the team. So he fires the head scout. Goes into the room after firing him, goes into this room, asks the guy, "Hey, have you ever played baseball?" He says no, and he goes, "Congrats, you're the head scout." All because his vision for the team is not based on the way of evaluating players at the time. It totally switches, and he is set on this vision, and he goes into it, and we'll kind of see a little bit once again of that second aspect. It's a little bit more personnel development based. He tells the team or tells the scouts and tells everybody his vision now is to become card counters at the blackjack table. They're trying to cheat the system, essentially pay less money for players who are going to get the same production and win enough games to get into the playoffs and hopefully win a world championship. So very analytics based and a lot of baseball talk that doesn't make sense if you don't know it. Don't know the movie, so trying to simplify it here. So yeah, like I said, reverses course from baseball's tradition based on his vision and where he wants the team to go. So then we get through the movie, things start not looking well for his team. So they're losing. He's on the hot seat. He's about to get fired. The manager's not playing his players as he wants them to play them, as he wants to play them. The team's not looking like he expected it to, and therefore the analytics are failing and they're losing games. So he kind of gets kicked into a little bit of save the job mode. He goes all in on his vision or mental model, as the book calls it. And I think vision's a lot easier, a lot more applicable to just general day-to-day things. So I've been calling it vision this whole time. So he goes an all-in commitment on his vision for the team. What that looks like is he cuts a couple players, he trades them away, gets them out of the building so that the team can be played his way. And you start to see some changes. So external actions he takes, like I said just a second ago. He buys more time to allow vision to develop. He goes back he gets probably called into the owner's office and it's like, "Why are we losing? What's going on?" And he says, "Look, give it some more time. It hasn't had enough time to get where we want it. By this date, we expect to be this good or have this record." That would be this working is the phrase that they use. And so buys a little bit more time. He trades away two of his players, and in return, he gets literally nothing except for just plays. This is just a quirky, funny part in the movie that I think someone said wasn't exactly true or didn't happen, but I think it's funny. Basically, all he gets for him is soda. He doesn't even really care what players he gets in return. He does have one of the opposing teams give him money to buy soda for the club, for the clubhouse. But this ensures the manager plays the correct roster because he traded away two players who were kind of clogging up space and not helping them win games. They're not playing into his vision. Then we get into his internal actions. This is the real cool leadership part of the movie. If you ever have a chance to look at it and evaluate it from that standpoint, it's really neat because he changes his leadership philosophy, becomes more involved in developing his players, and he becomes almost more like a coach, going individual with his players, and it's really cool. So results wise, they win 103 games, which is probably more than he even predicted they would win, or that any analytics predicted or any baseball mind at the time would have thought they were going to win. They go on a 20-game win streak. This is kind of the climax of the movie. It's the longest win streak in the AL at the time. That's now been changed. I think the Braves did it in 2017. They won 23 or something like that. And that they finished first place in the AL West, but the team ended up essentially in the same spot as it did the year before, losing three key players who no one thought they could rebuild without. And then it essentially changed the way the Major League Baseball thinks about team building and development and analytics. And now we see kind of a completely different scouting process, and ideals come from this, and the movie goes into it quite a bit. But yeah, specifically in ministry, though, I think all this comes back to vision. The vision for your team and your vision for the people under you and your vision for your ministry. If all of that is set, then you're going to succeed, and you're going to be able to get the results you want, or reach the people you're trying to reach. The biggest place I've seen this personally, and I'm sure it's everywhere else, but this is just drawing on personal experience here. Camp directors are essentially assembled or charged with assembling a team, whether that is staff or a leadership team or those right directly around him. They're in charge of doing that, and he has to ensure that these teams buy into the vision. So a lot of that comes from just putting the vision out there, open and honest with these team members, that they know what it is, what they're striving for, give them clear instructions of what to do and how to do it. Where you have them going. There's a scene in the movie where he goes in and he's talking to players who probably have no clue who he is at the time, but he's like, don't bunt. A bunt is an out. We don't want outs. We want you on base. And it's just kind of cool where it's like he's giving them specific, clear instructions, and he's telling them, breaking down their swing, breaking down their plate discipline, what pitches they're swinging at, what pitches they aren't swinging at, what pitches they need to see more, what pitches they need to do. And then he goes in and talks to a different guy in the clubhouse, and it's like, you're the old guy here. You have the most leadership potential of anybody here. I need you buy into that and buy into what we're doing here. If they see you doing it, they're going to buy into. It's a great scene. And I go back to my time at camp and I look at one of my leaders, and he essentially does that with each guy on our leadership team, and he'll look at them and he'll kind of does the same exact thing with them. He takes them where they're at and elevates them to where he needs them to be. And a lot of that comes from teaching and example setting and all of that as well, which we talked about this whole time. But that's what I've got here. So this is a funny part in the movie. He's trying to teach this. They're trying to sign this guy who's never played first base, and he says, first base isn't that hard. Tell him, and he says it's incredibly hard. And you can kind of see the quotes there and there. It's not that hard, but yeah, it's just a great part of the film, and I love it. But so here's another thing leaders need to be able to do: adjust the curveballs, enact the vision, point to it. His vision is to get guys who get on base, and he's making sure that everybody does it. So whatever your vision is in your ministry, get people who are bought into it and are willing to do it for you. And encourage team members to achieve the goal. I talked about that earlier. And yeah, it's excellent. References, here's what I looked at, movie, all of that, the book. Any questions? Nobody's here to give me questions. So hope you enjoyed it. Love talking to you all. If you've listened through this whole thing, thank you. And let's finish up the semester strong. Bye, y'all.